Welcome to another team selection video ahead of Game Week 11. I could be using my 2 free transfers this week and I'll be talking about my Game Week 10 performance as well. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it, and we're going to try to get this to over 300 likes in general, and we're also pushing ever closer towards 16,000 subscribers. So let's keep on pushing, and without further ado, let's get straight into this video. It's really difficult to nail the goalkeeper position because there isn't any standout. Nick Pope remains the highest scoring goalkeeper in the game despite blanking 3 times in a row, which is when I got him in Game Week 8 for a hit. And I always say this, never take hits for goalkeepers if you can help it, and only make free transfers for goalkeepers if it's absolutely necessary. But that's another 2-pointer, and Newcastle face Man United and Tottenham away within the next 3 game weeks, so things aren't looking too good in this front. Because Mitrovic missed out, I had Anderson come in for him for a 2-pointer, which was a bit frustrating because Andres Pereira was second on my bench and he got 6 points overall. And all things considered, it wasn't too shabby because he scored a goal, of course, and he could have had a higher return as a result. So I will take it. Anderson got a 2-pointer in a 2-1 victory for Crystal Palace over Leeds. There you go, it is what it is, and maybe I should have gone for Andres Pereira as my first substitute, but I was kind of in 2 minds about that. Reece James got a 1-pointer after coming on in the second half. If he had started the game, I am fairly certain he would have got a big return, even more so than the 6-pointer that I predicted heading into that week. Cancelo got an 18-pointer, however. He was one of the stars of the show for me, and that's a clean sheet, a goal, and multiple bonus points there for him. He's a bonus points machine. He's one of the best FPL assets, and he's always kind of underrated. And, you know, you look at the lack of defender options this season, and because there's no Trent Alexander-Arnold or Robertson stealing the show, Cancelo is by far the standout, and Reece James and Trippier are the only ones who could maybe come close to rivaling him, and even then, I don't think they do that. Trippier, though, got another 7-pointer, and he has been probably the surprise of the season for me at the back. I never expected him to get so many returns, and that's only a few blanks for him in the first 9 games that he has played, so I'm very happy with Trippier, but the rest of the defence, apart from Cancelo and Trippier, is definitely very underwhelming, and that not only applies to my team, but for the rest of the game as well. Despite being the hero last week, Maddison was the only midfielder who blanked for me this time round, and he also got a yellow card on top of that. Leicester actually got comebacked against Bournemouth, and they ended up losing 2-1, which is what I predicted, actually. I wasn't too surprised by that result. Heung-min Son picked up an assist for Harry Kane's goal, and he also got a clean sheet point, so not too shabby, and I was kind of ruining not going for Phil Foden because I almost did a last-minute transfer from Son to Foden, and I would have gained 5 points, but then I also had the Game Week 12 blank to think about, and because of that, and also a potential Game Week 11 captaincy, I ended up keeping Heung-min Son. Wilfried Zaha also picked up a late assist for Eze's winner, and Zaha has been a bit underwhelming in recent weeks, but I think the fixtures are there for him to really turn things around. And Martinelli has been absolutely electric. That's a 12-pointer against Liverpool, and that was even better than I expected, and I talked about holding him heading into this week, and he is one of the very best Arsenal options, and probably, in my opinion, the absolute best because he's just too cheap, and he should have started the season around 7 million at the very least. We talked about this heading into the first game week of the season, but really happy with my midfield overall. It's much stronger than it was before I played the wild card, but there's still a few options that are definitely missing, like Phil Foden, and that's someone I want to bring in after Game Week 12. I got returns from my 2 strikers. Haaland scored a goal. In typical fashion, of course, it's kind of inevitable at this point that he's going to score in most games this season. And Ivan Toney scored a penalty, but also picked up a yellow card. So a 5-pointer isn't too shabby. He obviously wiped out the Nick Pope clean sheet and also Trippier, but I'm not too bothered by that anyway because at least I had Ivan Toney to cover it as well. And for 2 out of my 3 players to haul, basically, despite them facing each other and obviously the defender versus forward conundrum, it's not, you know, a bad situation and not a bad end case scenario. So I'm happy with most of my team, to be honest, this week. There's only the odd exception here or there. Obviously, the Reece James thing is very frustrating, but he was obviously rested for the Champions League and he got injured in that game. So we're going to be talking about that in the Game Week 11 team selection portion of this video. And I'll also be talking about my future transfer plans as well using FPL.team. Before we do that though, this is how I did overall. 71 points, I've got 582 overall, and that's now 2 successive green arrows, and I've gone from around 1.2 million in Game Week 9 up to 794,000 in the world, which isn't great, but it's progress and I will take it. Haaland was my captain, and honestly, you know, Cancelo with the 18 points, so that was the only one that really kind of trumped Haaland, and also you could say Martinelli, but I'm happy with the captaincy, of course. He's kind of negating that captaincy debate every single week, and we just captain him and we focus on the rest of our squads. But now we're going to head into Game Week 11, which is also one of the few game weeks where we could seriously consider a captain other than Haaland if you look at purely at the fixture. And Game Week 12 will be very interesting indeed when we come to it, but let's wait and see. I'm now going to be talking about my Game Week 11 team selection. I always start the same goalkeeper, and it's no exception this time round, but I'm a bit uneasy about starting Nick Pope away to Man United, so I am actually going to consider maybe going for Ward this week, but I have to say Leicester are absolutely diabolical defensively, so despite that one clean sheet in Game Week 9 against Nottingham Forest, they were very lucky to keep that clean sheet, and I don't think it will happen too often this season, especially if they keep defending the way they are. So Nick Pope will be in goal, I think, but this is something I'm actually considering changing just before the deadline. I've got one injury out and also one of my top defenders on the bench. So Trippier will probably be first or second on my bench, as you can see. And Reece James is flagged. So let's wait and see if we get any more information over the next few days and hopefully before the deadline. But my gut feeling is that he'll miss out in Game Week 11 and potentially and hopefully be back for Game Week 12. And if that's the case, I'm happy to keep him and make my transfers elsewhere. But if he's out for a long time, then that's going to be a big problem because I see a lack of alternatives to replace Reece James, and I also just would like to have Reece James up until the World Cup because apart from Cancelo and Trippier, he's probably the next best thing, especially with the Game Week 12 blank in mind between Man City and Arsenal. So things aren't looking too great in my defensive line. Kilman is in here at home to Nottingham Forest, and I think I will start him. And if Reece James obviously misses out, then it would be Trippier coming in for him. And I also have Joachim Andersen, who could also come into things. And he is facing Leicester, but despite how poor Leicester have been, I think they're still decent offensively. So this is going to be a really tricky one in terms of the defence, but I think I'll go for this back three if they're all fully fit. The midfield speaks for itself, and I'm very happy with it, especially compared to, like I said, before the Game Week 9 wildcard. But Heung-min Son at home to Everton. If he was in form, I would seriously consider him from the captaincy. The fixture is there, although Everton have been one of the best defences this season in terms of goals conceded. I still think Spurs can score quite a few past them, maybe 2 or 3, and I wouldn't be surprised if they scored more than that like they did last season, despite Everton's improvements. So Heung-min Son, I don't think I will captain him. I would love to go for something different, but I haven't seen enough from him to really warrant that captaincy. James Maddison is at home to Palace. Of course, there's going to be a bit of a clash between Maddison and Zaha. Hopefully they're all in the same game, and it is possible, but to be honest, I'm not that confident, and I think it will maybe be a case of one rather than both doing it, but let's wait and see, of course. And Martinelli away to Leeds. This is a fixture that he thrived in last season, and I'm very confident in returns for Martinelli and Bukayo Saka for Arsenal. I think Arsenal could go rampant there, maybe score 2 or 3 goals away to Leeds, despite Leeds also improving defensively this season. So I'm happy with my midfield. It's definitely a much better case scenario compared to my defence, but still there's a few doubts lingering in my mind, and of course maybe the 2 free transfers can also help me this week. The other injury doubt in my team is Mitrovic, and I'd be very happy to keep him even if he is out for Game Week 11, but we get confirmation that he should return in Game Week 12. But it is a bit concerning. I am less optimistic than I was beforehand because Marco Silva has also kind of had that opinion and sentiment, and he has become more pessimistic about this situation. But we're hoping for the best case scenario there. And if Reece James and Mitrovic are out, and especially for a long period of time, then I might be in a bit of trouble, to say the least. Haaland picks himself, and to be honest, most people will captain him despite facing Liverpool away. And if we cast our minds back to the summer when we had the Community Shield final, Haaland was actually really good in that game. He took some very good positions. He just didn't finish the chances, and I could see a similar kind of game happening here. Maybe high scoring, both teams getting plenty of goals, but Haaland will get a lot of chances, and I see him finishing them this time round. So honestly, Haaland is a great captaincy choice, and unfortunately there's not much to discuss on that front. And Ivan Toney is at home to Brighton, which isn't the easiest game, and despite Brighton looking really open against Liverpool, they were also maybe a bit better defensively against Spurs, but I still think they can be targeted, and I could see Toney and Brentford scoring a goal or 2 in that game, but you would favour Brighton to win it overall. But I have to say, I'm very happy with my team overall. It's just a really big shame that Reece James and Mitrovic are flagged, and there could also be more complications as the week continues. Without making any transfers, this is how things would line up, and in terms of my bench, nothing would change even if I do make the 2 proposed transfers that I also talked about last week. The captain will be Haaland and the vice will be Son. I would love to go for something different, but I just can't really go for it because I think Haaland will score the most points from all the players in my team. Let me know if you have any different ideas for the captaincy, and what transfers are you making this week, and who are your ideal Reece James and Mitrovic replacements if they are ruled out. What I'm considering right now is to get Leandro Trossard in for Heung-min Son, who still has been relatively off form despite some improvements in the Brighton game, and Harry Kane would come in up front for Ivan Toney. That is assuming that Mitrovic and Harry Kane are fit, because Harry Kane also has a knock, but I would expect that to be cleared after the game against Frankfurt today in the Champions League. And in terms of my bench, Trippier will be first there, despite him being so consistent in terms of the return. So that doesn't fill me with confidence. But to be honest, if Reece James is out, Trippier comes in. But a double up in Newcastle defence away to Man United, that's where I could actually put in Ward in for Pope and Trippier would come in for Reece James. Let me know your thoughts on that as well. Andreas will be second on my bench. Hopefully it's not going to bite me like last week. And Anderson would be last, because even if Crystal Palace get the victory, I would expect them to concede in that game. So that is my team selection, and these are my potential transfers here, with Harry Kane and Trossard in for Heung-min Son and Ivan Toney, but it could also be Mitrovic if he's ruled out for a significant period of time. Now let me show you what I'm looking to do also in the future weeks, mainly in Game Week 13, because I think in Game Week 12 I could maybe just play the 11 that I have with Martinelli, Haaland and Cancelo benched, and then in Game Week 13 I can also bring in some further Arsenal Man City players. In Game Week 12, I would go for something like this as things stand, with kind of the proposed transfers as well. So Nick Pope would be in goal. Anderson, James, Kilman and Trippier would complete the back line. Maddison, Zaha, Trossard and Andreas would be my midfield, with Mitrovic and Harry Kane up front. And the captaincy would be between Trossard, Maddison and also Harry Kane. I think that's where I'm kind of heading towards, and Harry Kane's the safest pick, so to speak, but the fixture really isn't there for him. But it's still a relatively good team, considering that 3 of my best players will obviously be blanking. And in Game Week 13, this is where I'm looking to make 2 transfers, bring in Ben White for either Anderson or Kilman, and I can also bring in Phil Foden for Wilfred Zaha. So let me know your thoughts about these transfers that I'm also thinking about in Game Week 13, but of course things can change, and I might not even make these 2 transfers I'm talking about this week in Harry Kane and Leandro Trossard. And after these 2 transfers of White and Foden, I would have 0.3 million left in the bank. So I still have a bit of flexibility and leeway, and things could change, of course, if Reece James and or Mitrovic is ruled out for a long period of time. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's get this video to over 300 likes, and let's also push on to 16,000 subscribers. Thank you very much for that. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and also check the links in the description below for the FPL League, the Discord server, the Patreon and the channel memberships. All of that is there. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 11 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.